Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of the Rangers Gameplan podcast, where we discuss the week that was the New York Rangers, in this case discussing games 5 through 7, where the Rangers shit the bed in 2 of them, decide to actually give effort in 1, and lose the first round matchup, and are now out of the playoffs. It's a great time to be here. I'm Weston. Of course, I'm joined by good friend Evan to talk about what the hell that was as a series in general.
Oh man. um, where do you even start? I let me just start by saying that this is very difficult to even unpack, just because it wasn't even close, man. They um they got dominated yesterday, and they looked like they didn't care. And I wish, we were in an alternate universe where we were coming on here and saying, man, Mikula and Schneider just can't be out there against Jack Hughes. They look terrible. That wasn't the case. And the Rangers did not lose the series because of that. Nobody showed up. None of the top players showed up. And Igor Shesterkin has to be livid right now.
I gotta talk about him later on.
I mean, that was statistically, I believe, the best series he's ever had. And it means nothing. And Adam Fox says he feels bad for him, all that stuff. Like,
that helps so much. Thank you.
That's just, I don't care about that. A lot of the players, specifically Fox and Kreider, took accountability yesterday. But that doesn't really matter to me, their sins aren't washed away. And I mean, Kreider's been great in the series, whatever, but he was -4 yesterday, and that just can't happen. It's that simple. I don't care how upset he is after the game. I know I understand he's not trying to do that, but that was one of the worst games I've ever watched this team play in my life. And I think the one thing I wanted to bring up before anything else is, all season this team has been playing as if they have a Stanley Cup hangover. And the thing is that they didn't win the Stanley Cup.
No.
And all year, I mean, we're on what, 8 or 9 of these episodes.
Yeah.
The first few we were talking about, it doesn't look like they're trying, and the players admit that they're not really trying, and they admit that they're really saving their energy for the playoffs and all this stuff. And every game the Rangers lost was because of a lack of effort, and it is genuinely insane to me, considering it's a first-round matchup, and supposedly they were saving all their energy for this time of year. And it was a 7-game series without travel. I guess I should bring up as well. It's not like they're flying whatsoever. I mean, it's like a 20-30 minute drive back and forth. So I'm so dumbfounded right now, and I'm just disgusted at the effort that we saw last night.
You say it's one of the worst games you've watched. I think a lot of times I'll say the phrase, in a vacuum, something is the worst. You can't look at that game in a vacuum, because I'm sure there's been worse performances, maybe even this season, from that team. You have to look at the full context. You have to look at the fact this was not just an all-in push, but like a really historic, for the Rangers, at least as a franchise, all-in push at the deadline to make a run of this. To go out, and if you get Tarasenko or Kane at a deadline, again, you're automatically, regardless of any other move you made, going to be debated as, they might have won the deadline. That's incredible. They go get a household name who's Stanley Cup playoff performer. To get both, because one of them more or less held their franchise hostage to get here, and you can't make it out of the first round, is one of the greatest failures in this franchise's history. And I think because of what happened to Boston and the Avs upset with the Kraken, the fact that Tampa went out in the first round, and so both of the defending conference champions and the reigning President's Trophy winner, who was record-shattering in the regular season, all lose in the first round, I don't think the Rangers are going to get enough shit for what they just did. I really don't. And
it's not the biggest headline, which is crazy. It's not even close.
Any other year it would be. And on top of that, you look at just the roster is not going to get better. And you've said that 1,000 times. The first episode we did here, 2 months ago, even before that, right? Back in December, in January, in November, the problem with the team was, man, they are just not trying. They are not giving it. That's why the Trouba helmet throw became such a talking point, was because he got pissed off 27 games in. I want to say that was game 27 against the Blackhawks.
Something like that, yeah.
Chewed out the team live on the ice, and it was deserved. And they never got it together. They tried a little bit more after that, but it wasn't much. They started to straighten out.
You didn't see any of the issues truly get fixed after that. They kind of just cruised their way to some victories, but I never really felt that great about this team.
They put a bandage on it. They tried to fix it, but they never got it together. And the fact that then you have all of that, where you say, we're just saving our energy for the playoffs, we're just saving up we're just making sure we get there healthy and good and ready to rock and roll, baby, and then you go in there and do that. I'm not sure at what point I was going to bring it up, but I'll start with it now because we're already here and talking about it. Goodwill for this team and their effort is gone. And now you go into next season where not only are you still going to have high expectations because of the players you're paying, right? Just looking at contracts alone, you're going to have high expectations because you have so many high-named or top-billing players on this roster and stars on this roster. Even when you lose Tarasenko and Kane, you're still going to have those there. You've got to bring everything you have from the first game to the 82nd. And otherwise, fans are going to be pissed. Otherwise, you might not actually be able to do anything in the playoffs and we'll be back in the same situation again. There were like 5 players who I thought played consistently hard the entire series. I'm not even going to be able to say well. I'm just saying actually tried for all 7 games. It was Shesterkin, the entirety of the fourth line, and Kreider. He had a bad game in game 7, and I'm not going to say he didn't. Some not wonderful defense from Kreids. But you know what? At least he was trying. I said this in the group chat earlier. I'd rather you have a bad game because you had a bad game than because you just didn't get out of bed. And he was bad. -4 is real bad. To be on ice for all 4 of the goals is insane. And he's got to be better than that. He's one of the leaders of this team. But at least he was going. At least he was trying. I genuinely, outside of Kreider, I think the second best forward was probably Barclay Goodrow for the series as a whole. And that's insane to say.
Yeah, and I mean we're measuring this based on how many guys were skating hard. You know, like that's the bar we've set for this series because that just seems to be a hot commodity in this past 7 games. Like we were just begging for them to actually give 100% effort. And like I said at the beginning, I wish we could sit here and talk about, man, I wish we had home ice because the Devils line matched really well. And Jack Hughes ate Nico Mikkola and Braden Schneider alive, along with the fourth line, or whatever the case may be in that alternate universe. I wish we could sit here and say, man, you know, they got the better of the line matchups. It was a close game. You know, next year we got to strive for home ice. None of that mattered. And they lost this series because of all of our top players. That's what they lost the series based on. Igor Shesterkin was outstanding in the series, and in Game 7 he was once again outstanding, and only started. You know, he only gave up those 3 goals when the walls were caving in on him, and it is just so disappointing that we just did the same thing with Henrik Lundqvist. It's the same exact thing, and I'm just terrified that we're gonna have 2 of these phenomenal goalies back to back and not get a single piece of hardware out of it.
It's frightening, and I want to say, because Shesterkin, I have no words for what this team did to him. I don't think he allowed a bad goal this series. Like I can't think of one where I thought, oh, that was a cheap goal. You've got to have that. It was all the just goals yesterday were just defensive breakdowns, and then that 3-on-1, I think, for the third goal. I thought he had it. For a second, I thought he had it. And God, that was the worst one. I have his numbers for the series, if you want to be traumatized.
I've already seen some of them, but you might as well just rattle them off just for the
Uh,
sake of it.
Goal against of 196, save of 931. And I want to say his goals stopped above expected were over 8.5.
Oh man.
He more than doubled up the runner-up for the first round in goal against. I remember that vividly. His career
Yeah.
playoff numbers. This is insane. His career playoff numbers. 28 games played. 13 and 14 record. Goal against of 245. Save of 929. And he has a losing record with a 929 in the playoffs. I don't even understand how that's physically possible.
It's just like like I said, I believe that's statistically the best series he's ever had. I could be wrong, but that's what it feels like. Because I mean, you go back to last year against the Penguins, he was very good in that series, but you had a couple shaky games here and there. He didn't get lit up in any of these games, and those numbers just sound otherworldly to me. So I'd be shocked if there's something that's better than it, but that's really not, that's beside the point right now. The point is, how do you not win the series?
Yeah.
And you were up 2-0 in the series. And we've gone pretty far into this episode without even mentioning that they were 1 for 17 on the power play in the last 5 games.
Was it 1 for 17 or was it like 1 for? I thought it was 1 for 24.
Yeah, well, it stretches the 1 for 24 stretches into the wins, but for if game 3 on, they were 1 for 17. God. So that was the turning point, because even though they didn't really play all that great in any of those games, I mean, apart from game 6, but even then, I didn't think they played outstanding. Put all that aside, if you just scored 1 or 2 on the power play in each of those games, you probably win them.
Mm-hmm.
Just based on momentum and based on the fact that a few of those were close games. So yeah. I'm just speechless. I've said multiple times that the roster will not get better than this.
Absolutely will not.
And it's just insane that this is a video game type of power play. And that's all they have to show you. And it's really, really disappointing. The way that the power play fell off from last year, and the fact that they have more talent on it now than they did last year. I mean, there's no debate that Vlad Tarasenko and or Patrick Kane are far better power play, players than Ryan Strome. Mm-hmm. There's no debating that, and it's not even close. And it's just, I mean, those are the times where you need to step up as a group. Those top players could have won the Game 7 yesterday. They had 3 power plays in the first period.
I was going to say that.
And, I mean, don't get me wrong, there was a couple great saves by Schmid on those power plays. But I can only think of, I believe it's only the first or second power play where they actually had those chances. The other two, one they took a penalty on, and the third one, I don't think they got a shot. So that is just disgraceful. Obviously, the Devils certainly adjusted to Chris Kreider, but the fact that the Rangers didn't make an adjustment to counteract that is very shocking to me. And the one thing I did want to mention, there's a lot of blame to go around. Mm-hmm. You could pretty much point fingers at anybody you want, not named Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah.
And as much as I have not been in favor of Gerard Gallant, this is on the players.
Yeah.
100%. And that's not endorsing him. And let me just start off by saying I don't want him back next season.
Oh God, no.
But this series was on the players.
Yeah.
The blame goes both ways, right? Because this team never felt like a team. It's been said multiple times since they lost Game 3. They seem like a collection of superstars rather than a unit.
Mm-hmm.
And that is on the coaches. 100%.
Yeah.
Because they didn't get the players to ramp up, and they couldn't pick line combinations up until yesterday. I mean, from the time that all the trades were made and everybody was in the room, they had a different line combination pretty much every night, up until Game 7 of the playoffs. So that part is on the coaches. However, the power play is the same. It's all the same guys, right? So you need to step up in those moments. And I'm sorry, I don't. This is not a young team, right? You have a lot of veterans on this team. That's been talked about ad nauseum, right? It's one of the best rosters ever assembled in modern history.
Yep.
There's a lot of playoff experience on this team. You should not need a coach to get you to try in a game 7 or a playoff series, because like we keep mentioning, there was multiple games in this series, or multiple periods in this series where they looked like they couldn't care less about being on that sheet of ice. And that is just disgraceful to me, because I don't care who's behind the bench coaching you. You should not need someone to get you to try in a playoff series.
Yeah.
That just should not be the case.
Like, I definitely agree. There's tons of blame to go around, and I think there is a good bit of that blame that should fall on to Gerard Gallant. It doesn't matter. Whether you had him or if you didn't, it doesn't change the series. There were things that he did very poorly. He did not line match well at all. He did not adjust anything as the series progressed. That being said, it's not up to a coach to convince grown men to give a shit. It's not his fault. It's not his problem. If you can't, as a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, or a Stanley Cup champion in Tarasenko, or Zibanejad, Panarin, all of these other guys who have experienced crippling playoff loss in their career, and they can't get out of bed on their own, that's it. That's it. And also, I don't really give a damn if he didn't change anything on the power play. Your power play is so overloaded with talent that your second power play, for times this season, had Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko on it. There were stretches where they were both on the second unit. I don't care about coaching. You could have given any coach in the league to them. It doesn't matter. No one gets it out of them because they didn't want to be there. They, for some reason that I cannot possibly comprehend, they didn't want to try for a playoff series. They tried in game 1 and 2. They came back and decided, it'd be fun if we went to a game 7 and game 6. And game 7 started, and they didn't get out of bed. Yeah. And I watched that game, and the entire first period was like just this miserable realization that they weren't actually going to do anything. And you get into the second period. Second period is when the Devils got on the board, yeah?
Yes, it was the second period, yeah.
Okay, there was nothing after the first. And leading up to the McLeod goal, the writing was everywhere. There wasn't even when it was still 0-0, no sane Rangers fan, no logical Rangers fan was looking at that game like, it's still 0-0. Because it wasn't 0-0. That's what the score said. But the Devils were running them off the ice. And it was just biding your time, waiting to see how they got on the board first. And it was McLeod who gets them on to make it 1-0. And the Rangers never threatened. They never threatened them again. It was the Tomas Tatar goal where no one guarded him right in front. I forgot what the McLeod goal. The McLeod goal was the one where Fox got eaten alive twice, yeah?
Yeah. Fox turned it over. Kreider tried to go for it. Gets deked by Andre Palat, and McLeod's right open in front for the goal. So that was... And Mika Zibanejad also tried to block the shot, but just... I don't even know what he was doing. He kind of just slid across the ice and
he was having
made
fun.
No effort at the puck. So
he was going for a fun little spin on the ice. The Tatar goal was again right in front. The Eric Holla goal was a 3-on-1 where they had all the open ice in the world. And it just... The Rangers never felt in it for a Game 7. There was... From opening puck drop, it didn't feel like they had a chance. And...
Yeah.
If they would have lost that game, but tight, I'm an adult. I can handle them losing it because of normal reasons. If it was a neck-and-neck game, they lose 4-3 in regulation, but the Devils just barely edge you out, damn, that sucks. You know, they played well. But it's not
the
that.
one thing I will say is, I mean, the same thing happening in Game 5 and Game 7. Game 5, you get outshot 20-2 in the third period, and Not that I expected them to come back or anything, but you got to see some pushback.
Mm-hmm.
And last night wasn't nearly as bad. However, he still got beat on a lot of puck battles, and they lost a lot of races to the puck in the corners. And I was just sitting there watching that, like, what is going on? You know, like that was just unreal to me. How your season's on the line and you're losing puck battles that, convincingly. And the one other point that I did want to make is, I mean, the thing about it is, let's say there is a coaching change, which that sounds like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it has to be the move.
The power play is going to be the same.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no changing that. Regardless of if, Tarasenko or Kane are back, you're probably going to, it's just going to be a mix of one other player, but that core power play of Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, and Fox have been doing this for quite some time now.
Mm-hmm.
So, regardless of who the coach is, if you can't score on the power play or at least somewhat, at a decent clip in the playoffs on the power play, you're dead in the water. And it's so glaring how bad this team is 5-on-5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we chose to kind of ignore it a little bit last season because everything was so fun.
You did. You were losing your mind after every game. I remember that.
That is true. That is true. But I mean, it is what it is. Like, it's just glaringly obvious now. You can't ignore it because they didn't win. And the one other thing that I will say is, I mean, last year, if Crosby doesn't get hurt, they're probably a first round exit last year too.
Yeah.
Or if they played somewhat competent goaltending, against the Penguins, they probably lose in 5.
Yeah.
So all that considered, if this team is a first round exit 2 years in a row, it's a much, much different feel. And not to take anything away from how mad the entire fan base is right now, but if they lost in the first round last year as well, there would be major, major changes. I think the makeup of the roster is going to look a lot different next year, but I don't think any of the top guys are going anywhere, and that's a debate that's going to be had all throughout. Yeah. I mean, you're tied into these guys. But I mean, I don't even know what coach you bring in. That's my thing. Like it's coaching, goes a long way in terms of creating synergy for a team. But at the end of the day, the top players just got to be the top players, man. Like I've ripped Gerard Gallant apart for the full 2 years now. Don't get me wrong, I'm not endorsing him or anything like that, but a coaching change is not going to wipe away all of our issues. It's just not. The fact that the core players on this team literally cannot buy success 5-on-5 regardless of the opponent, by the way. I mean, they'll get outplayed 5-on-5 by like the Montreal Canadiens. It's insane. It's not like this is only happening against good teams. I don't even know what to say about it at this point. And the power play wasn't there to bail them out. And they're lucky Igor Shesterkin exists because this series would have been over in probably 4 or 5 without him. So I'm just so speechless in terms of what the hell we just witnessed last night and the fact that we have so many different conversations to be had this offseason. And I guess we'll just mention the kid line. Mm-hmm. I guess that's where we'll go from here. I'm done, personally.
Yeah.
I'll just go out and say that. I don't care if that comes back to bite me. I would love that. I said that the last episode when I was asking for them to step up, and they didn't. So Philip Hedl, if he's going to have his one hot streak per year and be useless otherwise, then I don't really care for him on this team. I just don't. And Alexis Lafreniere basically contributes nothing to this team, and he's a first overall pick that was right up there in terms of records with Sidney Crosby and Wayne Gretzky in junior leagues. Mm-hmm. So it's not like we were just overhyping this guy when we drafted him. He had that legitimate hype all the way leading up to his draft day. So regardless of if the Rangers developed him properly or not, which I think we can all agree that they definitely botched that to some degree, but at some point he's got to do something. You know, same could be said for Capo Caco. Neither one of them have panned out really whatsoever. They were complete non-factors in this series, and when we previewed this series, we both said that was the X factor, because if they play to their ceiling, that is what makes the Rangers a deeper team than the Devils, and they did literally nothing. So, like I keep saying, they'll cycle the puck around for a minute and a half, but it doesn't lead to a scoring chance. So I don't care. You know, I'll give them credit for at least skating hard, which was very uncommon for this team in the losses in this series. Mm-hmm. But that's as far as I'll go. And if you have the opportunity to replace them, I'm just going to do it.
That's the thing that I was going to bring up. I want to first say, back to the effort and how irritating Game 7 was, before I get into the kids. I think my least favorite moment of last night, it was an incredible hit, and it was the only thing that got me out of my seat. Trouba laying out Timo Meier with like 5 minutes left in the game genuinely pissed me off. Clean hit, in my opinion. I thought it was fine.
Why didn't that happen earlier? Why didn't that happen earlier?
Why didn't that happen in Game 4? Why didn't that happen in Game 5? Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. It's like, I'm so happy that you've chosen now. And I don't even think Timo Meier thought it was a bad hit, because they were hugging afterwards. Like, he shook everyone else's hand. Timo Meier got in for the hug.
They were cool. Laughing it up with each other.
Yeah. No, Timo Meier was like, hey, good clean hit. It wasn't a bad hit. It was just, why does that come with 5 minutes left in a 4 or 3 goal game? Why do you now find the resolve to think, fellas, it's time to get out of our seat? That threw me.
Yeah.
And to the kids line, I despise that you're right with the fact of coming into the series. The prerequisite was the Rangers are going to run away with it if the kids line can produce anything at all. If they can get 2 goals in the series, they'll run away with it. And they didn't. Kako had a fine first 2 games. Everyone had a fine first 2 games. It was after that.
Yeah.
Kako, Hedl, Lafreniere were invisible. They were, I guess I should say, invisible offensively. I still maintain that as a unit, up until Game 7, as a team, they played good defensively. And maybe I'm dumb, but up until the final game, I thought they were still fine and the defense held. They were invisible. They did nothing. And it's not just that you're spending first-round draft picks. It's not like Lafreniere was the 28th overall and Kako was, 19th or something. These are first and second overall picks. Hedl is the only one that gets a slight pass because he was like 18th overall. But even still, you just gave him a big extension going into the playoffs for him to do nothing. And now you look at Lafreniere and Kako, who are restricted free agents, and I said it in the group chat, which was talking about Ryan Reeves, and you said that there would be no difference if Reeves or Lafreniere were here. And I said there would be a difference because Reeves would at least do something. He would at least be noticeable. And I understand the talent that Lafreniere has, and I'm not going to say that, Reeves is more talented offensively than Lafreniere. I'm not stupid. But, by God, these aren't kids anymore. These aren't young players.
Yeah.
That's going to be year 5 next year for Capo Caco. It's going to be year 4 for Lafreniere. And
that's a lot of NHL time.
Yeah.
If it were year 2 or 3, it's not as bad, but 4th and 5th years, you gotta see something.
Like, I can't get out of bed anymore because holy shit, guys, look, Kako and Laf got 45 points. I just can't do it. And
I could just confidently say that it's not because of the ice time. It's just not.
No.
I mean, it's that simple. Like they are non-factors in 85-90% of the games that they play. So you could give them first line minutes. I don't think it's going to change a thing. And like I said, I would love if next year they're all back and they become the best players we've ever seen put on a Rangers jersey. I would love that. I would love to eat my words on that. But I'm just so done at this point because how many games and how many seasons is it going to take for them to do anything of significance? I mean, especially in a playoff series. And the one other thing that I will say about them, being on the third line should be a good thing for them because they're playing against the opponent's lesser players most of the time. So I mean, if that's the case and you're still not giving me anything, then I'm just done at this point, because I would rather maybe, if you could replace Lafricako for some guys that can help 5-on-5. I'm not asking for more superstars or anything like that,
No.
but there's plenty of middle six forwards that are defensively responsible and good 5-on-5. And that's something that this team doesn't have anywhere other than the fourth line.
Yeah.
And it's that simple. And I guess I can't believe we haven't even mentioned Vinny Trocheck yet, because he got overpaid by this team.
What a
he got
deal!
Overpaid. He got overpaid, and the reason for that was because we thought he was going to be awesome in the playoffs, because we just played him, and he was a thorn in our side that entire series, and he did nothing. He had 1 point. 1 point. And that's another guy. You are married to so many of these players for multiple years, and there's nothing you could do about it because they're paid way too much money. So I don't know what to do at this point, because I seriously doubt they bring Vlad or Kane back. I doubt it. Maybe you get Vlad back, but who knows? We'll talk about that at some point. But the only spot in this entire lineup that you have some maneuverability would be the third line, because they're not paid yet, and you could replace them now before you're tied into them. So I would just do it. Especially, I mean, Lafreniere with 0 points. 0. And I believe I said it on the last episode as well, but if you're not going to live up to that hype, and you're not going to be this 90-point player that everybody thought you were going to be, you at least have to be a Swiss Army knife. Like, you have to kill penalties, you have to play defense, all those things. Not to say he's terrible defensively,
no,
but he does nothing. He does nothing for this team other than just skate around on the third line with those other two guys. Like, he doesn't, like I just said, he doesn't kill penalties. He's not some great player defensively. He just gives me nothing most nights. So I'm completely out on him. And like I just said, that's the only place in the lineup that you can actually move pieces around right now, because everybody else is locked in for like 5-6 more years, and there's nothing you can do about it.
It's
and
great.
I mentioned this as well. I mean, not on here, but I've just mentioned this to some people. I mean, I said this when they were down 2-0 to Carolina last year. If you're not better than these teams now, you're not going to be, because they're younger than you. And I mean, against Carolina, they ended up winning the series, so I didn't get to fully, bring that point to life. But if you're not better than the Devils now, you're never going to be with this group, because they are much, much younger than you, and they have a lot more maneuverability in terms of cap space, and they're still going to add pieces. So this was it. I mean, obviously it's a lot of talking in the moment and stuff like that, but I just don't see how you can potentially improve this lineup whatsoever. And like I just said, I don't think a coaching change would make all that much of a difference in terms of getting your top guys to just do something. I guess the only thing a coaching change would improve is hopefully you could bring a guy in here that actually has some form of structure, because that is something we have never seen with Gerard Gallant. It's that simple. I mean, they got outshot every game they played last year. They are still terrible 5-on-5. There's no improvements to these issues that we've been talking about for 2 years now. There's no improvement. So hopefully you can bring someone in here that actually has a good system and some structure, because Gerard Gallant in his career as a head coach so far has worn out his welcome very quickly with every team he's coached. And that's because you can only run on vibes for so long. I mean, that's what it comes down to. There's no actual structure that this team plays with. They've just found ways to win. And you can only run on that gas for so long before it runs out. And, I mean, like we keep saying, we lost this series because of the top players, but there's a lot of blame on the coaches for not getting this team to gel in time for the playoffs. Yeah. It's that simple. And Gallant, yesterday or last night after the game, obviously everybody's seen the quote about him saying talent doesn't matter and they've got to play like a unit. But that's essentially him saying that he didn't play a role in this series.
Yeah.
That's what that is. Because what do you mean that they need to start playing like a unit? That is quite literally what a coach of a sports team is supposed to do and make that happen. At any level, I don't care if you're playing Pee Wee baseball or you're in the Super Bowl. The coach has to get the team to play like a team. So if you're telling me that you don't think they played like a cohesive unit, then what did you do? What were you doing in practice? I don't understand. That is so mind-blowing to me. And I keep saying I was never a fan of him, and there's 50-50 blame to go for on his part as well as the players, but the coach and maybe some other depth pieces are really the only changes that can happen to this team. Yeah. So if that's the case, then I'm very worried because, like I said, if you're not better than some of these teams now, you're not going to be because they're only going to get better. So you got to figure it out.
Yeah, no, when Gallant made that quote, I read it and I was like, yeah, I agree. Wait a minute. Hold on now. That's your fault. Like, wait a minute. You almost got away with that. You basically just said, yeah, I didn't do shit this entire series. And back to the kids line, because I need to talk about that for a moment, because that's really the only thing you can go with. And, like, the youth of this team. And you're not going to get better unless Brendan Othman is everything you thought Lafreniere was going to be. Which, I gotta be honest, the way he's played in, I think, the AHL for the Firebirds, he's played great.
One of those leagues, yeah.
He's played great. And I'm like, damn, Brendan Othman might come up and in his rookie season just cook Lafreniere, which would be wild if that happened, by the way.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you look around. The kids line is the only thing you can change. Because people are talking about, oh, which head should roll of the top guys? And I'm like, are you dumb? Look at the contracts.
It's not physically possible.
They're all locked in with either the amount of money they have, the years they have left, or the fact that there's no movement clauses. You can't get rid of anyone. Like, you can't...
And they all just destroyed their value.
Yeah, like also that.
Based on this series alone, nobody's going to want them after they just did that.
You're not.
So you're locked into these guys. So, yeah, oh my God.
It's not a matter of, like, you can't just go out and get rid of Artemi Panarin tomorrow because you feel like it. Like, you'd have to talk some... Also, I'm pretty sure he has the no movement clause. So you have him until he's physically done.
And nobody's going to take on $11.6 million
Is it only 11.6? I thought it was 12.5.
It's 11.6.
Okay.
But it might as well just be 12.5 because, I mean, it wouldn't make that much of a difference.
Like,
yeah,
you're paying so much for the top guys, and they did absolutely nothing. You can't, like, you have flexibility, technically speaking, with the fourth line, but they didn't do anything to deserve having any of their heads roll. Like, that was legitimately the most consistent line for all 7 games, was them. Like, and I would even go as far as to say, if right now you said, Weston, you can either have Tyler Mott back or Lafreniere. I am saying Tyler Mott, and I'm not letting you finish the sentence.
Yeah.
It's not a matter. Because, like, at least Tyler Mott looks like he's ecstatic to be here. At least
he's a consistent contributor.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
His job. Like, Kakko has not gotten a lot of near the trade want or the trade desire as Lafreniere because, yeah, it's like you said, if you can't be a 90-point scorer, you have to be able to do everything. Kakko can. He's a perfectly fine penalty killer. He's pretty solid defensively. His offense has started to tick up a little bit, but again, not nearly enough as to what we need out of them at this point. Like, I'm fine with Kakko staying. I think the obvious, if you're looking around, is probably Lafreniere. But again, to just already throw in the towel on a first overall pick that had that much hype is... It's wild. And I'm not saying throw in the towel in a bad way, because, you know, he kind of deserves it at this point. But for coaching, Gallant's got to be gone. It's not a question at this point, because he ran on vibes with this team, but they weren't vibes that he brought. It was... He happened to get a bunch of people that liked hanging out with each other, and he just didn't ruin it. But now, he's come out and basically said, I didn't contribute. And while the blame is not exclusively on him by any means. I still think the majority of it is on the top guys. The things that he could control in that series, he got coached under the table by Lindy Ruff. The things that he could change, he didn't adjust to anything. His line matching was genuinely horrifying. And he's got to go. And then today, the rumor comes out that apparently Joel Quenneville would be an interesting name for the Rangers, and I can't emphasize to you
that literally changes nothing. That literally, it might make it worse.
It would make it worse,
like,
because
honestly,
now you're adding that guy to this team. Like, you understand the media circus that followed him for one singular night before he got canned in Florida? Do you know what would happen with that in New York City? Like...
Oh, man.
That's going to be great. No, I totally want a person who has a borderline criminal record coming in to be the head coach. That'll go wonderful. Like, you're not going to come in with that history and win over these guys because they haven't played with you.
And I mean, like I keep saying, I don't know who you get, but...
You can't get anyone! You're at the... Oh, wait, coaching-wise.
Yeah, coaching-wise, I mean, I would hope they find some really good assistant somewhere, and just give him a shot, because I'm done with basically every team in this league. They refuse to do that, and they just hire these known these quote-unquote big-name coaches that have been fired a million times. So you got to give other guys a shot at some point, and I don't necessarily trust our ownership to do that, but hopefully it does. And I keep saying it's 50-50 on the coaches and the players. It really is. And the one thing that I kind of just thought of, and I want to talk about this for a little bit, is the reason, we're talking about this team being a collection of stars and they're not a cohesive unit and all that stuff. I mean, listen, the reason that you had to go out and trade for a Tarasenko or even Kane is because the kid line is not very good. And we've tried them in the top 6 and they still do nothing. So that's why you have to make these moves happen. And not that I'm trying to only blame them. The top players completely shit the bed in this series. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, what are we going to do? We're going to trade for 2 or 3 players every trade deadline to give Zibanejad and Panarin help? I'm sorry. Those guys should be producing regardless. They're supposed to be the best players on the team. You shouldn't need to go out and get rid of assets every year to help these guys. You just shouldn't. And I guess we'll just go right through it. I mean, obviously Kreider was the only one out of basically the entire top 9 forwards that looked like he had a pulse. Zibanejad did essentially nothing. He had 1 goal. Congratulations, whatever. Tarasenko looked good for the first couple games, whatever. He wasn't really a difference maker. Kane wasn't really a difference maker. Panarin was a ghost. Trocheck is severely overpaid. And what do you even do with him at this point? You gave him that money because you thought he was going to produce in the playoffs, and he did nothing. He had 1 point. And like I just said before, what are you going to do? You're going to have to trade for whoever becomes available next year and hope that they can gel with Mika and Panarin? Like, are we just going to do that every single year for the rest of this core's time with the Rangers? I'm sorry. That's just... I don't even know where you go from here with that, because the core players you have in place should just be good enough 5-on-5 that you don't need to get these superstars to help them. You just shouldn't.
Look, if you have to go make trades at the deadline, it's because you're helping out the bottom end of your team. Like, for a legitimate contender that has the players the Rangers have, you're getting third-line guys to make sure that you're deep enough, that are good enough, that could probably play on your second line if you really have to. Like a Timo Meier guy, the Devils put him on their third line. But that's a move that, like, hey, he's a third-line player as of right now. That's what we're going to call him. But if there happens to get an injury, he can definitely play first or second-line minutes, so we're still going to be fine. Like, you're thinking about depth more than anything. The Rangers go out and get guys to help the top of their lineup. And I'm sorry, Panarin, who's making 11-6, how are you going out to get players to hold his hand through the playoffs?
Yeah.
Going into 2024, the 2023-24 season, like the top guys on your team. You had Artemi Panarin, 11-6, got you no goals, 2 points. Adam Fox, no goals, had a few assists, but again, the Adam Fox conversation low-key needs to happen. Because holy shit.
A couple really bad games from him in this series.
Oh my god.
Really, really bad.
Dumpster fire, I was not impressed with him at all this entire season. He was mid. He was mid the entire way through of it. And with Lindgren being out for as long as he was, you kind of have to address the unpleasant conversation, which is he has to have his babysitter there, or he's a borderline liability. And he's making $9.5 million. Which is...
Yeah, and I know a lot of people will try to close their eyes to that, but there was a couple months in the regular season where he was bad. Yeah. He was really bad. And he had a couple really bad games in this series, including Game 7, where he was literally the sole reason for a goal against. Yeah. So, once again, you are tied into these guys for multiple years. So I don't know what... I don't even know what to say. Like... I keep saying this. I wish we could just come on here and be like, damn, the Devil, it was just a really close series. Like they just took advantage of the line matchups. They were the better team all regular season. We just got beat. I wish you could just get beat and you didn't shoot yourself in the foot. And like I keep saying, I'm not trying to take credit away from them. They made the adjustments they had to. They stepped up when they had to, and they won the series. And they deserve to win the series. 100%. So let me just get that out of the way. But I don't think I will ever get over the fact that they went 1 for 17 on the power play in the last 5 games of the series. I mean, as great as the Devils played, for them to take that many penalties is a gift to you. They handed you the series. And they had a million power plays in the first 2 games as well. And it worked out in those 2 games, but like I said, that the 1 for 24 stretch goes for that carries into game 2. Yeah. So but I mean the important part of that percentage, it comes in the turning point in the series. The first 2 losses and everything goes downhill from there because you couldn't capitalize on the power play and you got dominated every single time it was 5-on-5. They literally couldn't do anything 5-on-5. So I'm so just disgusted with the effort here, and oh man, I just don't even know where you go from here. I guess as the rumors come out this offseason, as rumors are made, it'll be a lot easier to kind of talk ourselves into some things. But as of right now, I'm just not confident this team has the mental fortitude as a group to win the Stanley Cup. I'm not confident in it.
I don't know how you could possibly say they are after watching what we just did in that series. We
haven't mentioned either that this is the second consecutive series where they blew a 2-0 lead to get eliminated.
That's fun to bring up. Oh,
so I had
a fun little thing. I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'll go off on this bit.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to talk about a little bit how the past couple episodes I was, talking about how they didn't stop talking about that, where they were like, hey, we don't want to do that again. And they did everything in their power to do it again. So I don't know.
The thing I need to bring up is talking about just how brutal, and we already kind of touched on it with how good he was this series for Igor Shesterkin. There has nary been a man more raked over the coals than Igor Shesterkin was. In his 2 elimination game losses, the Rangers have given him 1 singular goal. 1. You had the Frank Petrano goal last year against Tampa. You got shut out in this one. In the 4 losses this series, the Rangers averaged half a goal per game. Half a goal per game against Schmid! Half a goal per game. Yeah. And I don't know how soon they can do it. They, as a brass, as an ownership group, as a management group, the Rangers need to kiss his ass so hard in the offseason and in the future. Because he's not dumb. Shesterkin is not a stupid player. He can look at what happened to the man whose job he took over and go, fellas, I'd kind of like to not waste my career here and never win a cup. It's the thing. There's been no rumor that said he would. There is nothing to indicate that he would. I'm just putting it out there because it needs to be said. If tomorrow morning Igor Shesterkin went to the management group and said, I want out, trade me, not a single person could go, man, he's given up. No. They failed him. It would be warranted. I would cry my eyes out. But it'd be one of those things where it's like, yeah, I can see why you'd get there. Because now you have, through 28 playoff games, a goal against at less than 2.5, and this year, a sub-2 goal against in a series loss. It's... I mean, yeah. It's taken him but a few seasons. It's only taken him 2 full 82-game seasons to reach the heights of the heartbreak of Henrik Lundqvist. It's incredible what they've done to him so quickly. And
yeah, I just cannot believe they didn't win this series, considering they were up 2-0, and considering how well Igor played. It's so mind-blowing to me. It really is. And just gotta hope it doesn't happen again. That's all I can even say. There's nothing I can analyze about it other than hopefully the top guys just show up. That's all you can say about this. I mean, it's just so frustrating that we have to sit here and talk about how our top guys let us down. Because going into Game 7, I trusted them. I really did.
Our first mistake.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely our mistake for doing that. But Panarin did nothing. Nothing. Let's say he was at least making some plays and he just wasn't getting points out of it. I wouldn't be as mad, but he was a complete non-factor in this game, or in this series. Like, he did absolutely nothing of significance, and last year he struggled a lot in the playoffs as well. That Game 7 overtime winner is really the only thing he can hang his hat on. So, I mean, if you're not going to pay this guy 11.6 to be a playoff liability every year, so he's got to figure it out. And I mean, that's just something that's not going to be changed by a coach or his line mates or anything like that. It's just got to be on him. So hopefully he turns that around. But as of right now, a lot of people are going to be very upset with him until he hopefully eventually turns around in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the top guys. The whole series boils down to that. The Devils' top guys showed up. Mika and Panarin were no-shows. And it sucks. I don't like that that's where we're at. But, I mean, goddamn. You have, of your top 5 highest paid, players, they had, or top 4, because Kreider actually tried. But of Panarin, Fox, Zibanejad, Trouba, and I understand that 2 of those guys are defensemen, but Adam Fox is supposed to be this offensive god. You had 1 goal out of them in 7 games. And it's just...
It just can't happen. It just can't happen again. Like, it is just so beyond frustrating and disgusting that we actually watched them play 60 minutes without giving any true effort or really pushing the pace whatsoever in an entire Game 7. And it was only on the top guys this series. I can't blame anyone else. I did not notice one single bad play from Mikkola. I didn't notice a single bad play from, let's say, the 4th line. Nothing. It was just the top 9 forwards and Adam Fox, and you might be able to throw Trouba in there as well.
I thought he was fine defensively speaking.
I mean, he was fine, but you got to step up earlier. If you can't throw,
that's fair.
That's all it is. I mean, the fact that we didn't necessarily see a change in urgency from games 4 onward is on him. I mean, it's not only on him because we keep saying there's a lot of veterans in that room. So there's a lot of leadership that's supposed to be there. But when you're talking about something like that, that's got to be on the captain. It just has to be. So, I mean, he should have maybe stepped up for a hit earlier or something to spark the team, or scream in the locker room. I don't know, but as the captain, you got to do a better job of getting your guys ready to go. It's as simple as that. I mean, I can't really blame any of the defensive players. I really can't. I mean, I thought maybe they of course looked shaky in last game because the entire roster got dominated 5-on-5. But you shut down a lot of their top guys points wise. And the one thing I will say is, I mean, their top guys showed up, maybe not like crazy on the score sheet,
Right.
but at the end of the day, Nico Heischer played a great two-way game.
Yeah.
A fantastic two-way game. I mean, Timo Meyer had like a million shots on goal in the series. It's just unfortunate for him. Igor was playing as well as he was, but
Yeah.
Timo Meyer made a major impact in the series. So, I mean, like we keep saying, if you're going to get beat, I just got to see more effort. Like the Devils did not change their compete level all series long. And regardless of how frustrated their top guys were getting, they still pushed the pace. It was that simple. Even if they weren't getting points or goals out of it, they still made an impact. And we didn't see that from the top guys. Panarin, if the puck's not going in the net for you, I still got to see you making plays and look like you're trying.
Yeah.
Like it's that simple. I can't believe we even have to talk about this. It was all season long that we saw a lack of effort from this team. And not only that, but the issues we've been talking about have not been fixed.
Not whatsoever.
Not even a little bit. I mean, we'll see what happens. That's all I could say, but it's just so disappointing. The colossal collapse that just happened. You were up 2-0. This is the best roster we might ever see on paper from this team, and we'll just see what happens going forward.
So
it's so sickening that we're out in the first round, but here we are. So
I want to try to get as much negativity out as we can in this episode, so the next time we get together, we're talking about things that might be slightly hopeful.
yeah,
I mentioned it to start it, and I believe you agree, but I want to double down on it. Any goodwill is gone with this team.
Mm-hmm.
Until they actually win a cup, or at the bare minimum the conference, I don't think fans are going to fully buy back into them. And for good reason, I would definitely say. Which is, and again, Tampa was better than you, and I'm not going to say they weren't, but you had them by the throat you had them by the throat last year, and you completely destroyed yourself in that series. And in this, you had the Devils, who you were better than, down 2-0, and you go 1-4 in the last five games. Any goodwill is gone with this team until they give us reason to believe again, which is an awesome thing. And then next, before we call it, the Rangers have about $9.9 million in available cap space, pending free agents, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm only going to go through the ones that I think are legitimate that you would think about bringing back. Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, obviously, Lafreniere, Nico Mikkola, Halak is gone, who again I thought was fine this season as a backup, Mott, Miller, Zach Jones, Ryan Carpenter. You have a lot of spots to fill, and you have $9 million to do that. And I don't know how you possibly... Oh, it was not 9.9. It was 9.1. So even better.
even better. Awesome.
You don't have a backup goaltender at this... Oh, excuse me. Wait, you do have a backup goaltender. You have Louis Domingue as your backup going into next season if nothing changed at this moment in time with the cap space. And you also would be then asking Johnny Brodzinski to be one of your starting four centers and Ben Harper back in action as your defenseman. Because,
And then, once again, you're just going to be gasping for air until the trade deadline because your guys you have are not good enough.
But again, you're going to have a 5-way trade because you're going to have to beg everyone in the league to take on cap to get anyone.
Yeah. They are so handcuffed right now, and I guess we'll just have to do a full episode to break down all the off-season talk. But I mean, like you said, we're trying to get all the negativity out right now. So pitiful performance from the team in this series.
Yep.
Completely pathetic. 2 years in a row, you blew a 2-0 lead, and the path to the finals was wide open.
Oh my God, we didn't even mention Boston.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Boston's out, and
Yep.
now if you wanted it, you could have made the Stanley Cup Finals,
Oh,
but
yep.
they're out. So and we have to watch everyone else attempt to do that. So that's awesome. And then you gotta just try to fill in all your gaps with no money. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But as of right now, this definitely stings, and it stings really bad, especially to lose to a rival. But what are you gonna do? You know, so I guess, like I said, we'll probably have to come back on and break down everything in terms of who are we gonna bring back and how. But as of right now, this is this is the most depressing episode we've done together so far.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully it stays like that for the rest of the time we make videos. Hopefully
yeah,
this is
so
the lowest
we'll
point.
see. We'll see, but I mean, I guess we've kind of ripped apart on every aspect of this team. I guess I'll just end by saying I'm so sorry, Igor, and
Oh my
it's
God.
totally cool if you want out of here. Don't blame you. So we'll see what happens, but I have nothing else to say for this team. So
I'll throw
we'll
in
see
I'm
what
sorry.
happens.
I'll throw in I'm sorry to Chris Drury as well, because
Yeah.
his sweet super team did dick all in
Yeah.
the series. But yeah,
And I mean, I guess the exit interviews are tomorrow, so hopefully we have some
Oh.
fun stuff to talk about after that. But I
Oh,
guess
boy.
we'll probably do one next week just to kind of recap everything
Yeah.
that comes out from the player quotes, and I mean, we could even maybe just do some recaps of the other games in the playoffs that
Yeah.
we're not a part of anymore, just to
Yeah.
put something out. So we'll figure it out, but
Until then, I think that's our piece, and I also don't think they deserve any more of our time.
yeah, pretty
think
much.
that's-
So
yeah.
that's all I've got.
I'm right there with you. So, once again, thank you all for coming out and listening to these. I am extremely sorry and sad that we don't do more of these for the Rangers playoff run. That would have been very interesting, but, they decided that trying in the first two games was enough. So until next week when we come out to talk about the player interviews, maybe potential cap moves, maybe other teams that are still playing, God, wouldn't that be fun? I think that's all we have. So thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day, and as always, go Rangers.
Go Rangers.